We have such an incredible guest here today. How are you doing, Deanna?
I'm great. So glad to be here. Such an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So tell me something. Your website calls you a belief builder, right? And I've often not seen that two phrases together, two words together. So tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do.
I'm actually an empowerment coach, and I coach burnt out, confused entrepreneurial women to really answer the question, who am I and why am I here? And that is a journey that I've been on for many years. So physician's assistant trained and went into multi-level marketing. And now I am transitioning into coach.
That's amazing. And I love how, you have a very specific audience because I find that, I work with women who are ditching alcohol. Burnout is such an just prevalent thing, whether I think we're either burnt out sometimes by overload, like too much stress, too much just on our plates, but also sometimes boredom. I don't know if that makes sense, right? It's like we're listless, we're restless, we don't have our purpose under kind of our feet. So, it kind of comes in so many different ways. So when you help women and you help work with their beliefs and subconscious, like what does it even mean to change beliefs or be a belief builder or anything like that?
So I work specifically with entrepreneurial women because most of us are so driven. And if we're not crystal clear on, our core values in the major areas of our life, in our career, in our relationships, in our health and vitality, and our purpose and calling, if we're not crystal clear in those areas, we'll say yes to so many things that aren't really serving our dream. And so that creates burnout. So basically what I do is I really do a deep dive into trauma, actually. And through working with trauma, you rebirth your purpose and calling. It's there, we're born with it, but we get into this world with, our cultural views, our societal views, our parental views, relationships that we have, and we cover that up just by being in the world and basically looking for our value and our worth through the external. So that purpose and calling is there, but so many of us have it so buried in false belief systems and identities that we have created just walking on this earth. So it is my life's mission and passion to really help women pull that out, because obviously I went through that myself, or I wouldn't be able to walk women through that.
Yeah. So I can't wait to dive deep into this false belief system, but tell us a little bit about what that looked like for your journey, so go as far back as you'd like, but how did that sense of hustling for your worth or doing things for approval from other people and the burnout, all those kind of things, and finding purpose eventually, like how did that all manifest for you? And did alcohol play a role?
Alcohol definitely played a role. Yeah, for sure. So we all have traumas. So some traumas may not be your traumas aren't going to look like mine, and some people will say, but I really didn't have a traumatic event. But truly we do. Most of us have been bullied at some point in our life. But the trauma that I experienced, I experienced multiple traumas as a child, but the one that made the biggest impact is when my parents divorced at the age of 12, and my stepdad, who was considered my dad at that time, he no longer wanted to see me and my brother. And so it was double duty there. And I created this belief system that I'm not important.
Mm.
And ironically, at age 12, I had my first drink of alcohol. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so happy right now. And that began the cycle for me. But what I learned during that particular phase of my life is I got a lot of attention and I felt really important when I made good grades, when I was in Palm, when I succeeded, when I achieved. I got my first job at 15 and a half. I was important based on what was happening externally. And that began this cycle. I've been very successful by society standards in my life. But once I achieved that goal, that dream, I felt completely empty and completely burned out because I spent all of my energy trying to achieve this goal that I thought was going to bring me that value of feeling important. So, through that journey and through my journey with alcohol, which has been a high and low throughout my entire life, I was called to write a book. I was called to write a book 6 years ago, and I finally sat down. I was in a place where I was free of distractions, and really God had to move us to this small, tiny town of my husband's, and a population of 15,000. I'm a city girl and now living in a small town, but free of distractions so that I could really laser focus on that call. And I started to write the book about my childhood. And I've told the story many times. I can tell a story, but to actually write it on paper, it opened up so many wounds for me. And there were so many times when I was actually, you know, just to be real, I was in my closet rolled up in a ball thinking, I don't think I can feel these feelings anymore. They're so incredibly painful. And I obviously made it through that process, but the healing journey began through the book process. And I really started to do deeper dives into what is the belief system that I created that's causing me to participate in life this way? What is the belief system that I've created that is causing me to turn to alcohol to numb? What am I numbing? So I really needed to look on the inside. So many people think, alcohol is the problem. Alcohol is not the problem. The problem is our belief system that most of us are completely unaware of. So going through that process myself has been so transformational. I have to tell you, I went from so many low days of, not wanting to get out of bed and not having any passion, not having any motivation, to jumping out of bed with joy and excitement and on mission and with passion to help other people transform the way that I have. So that's kind of the long story on how I got where I am today. And, we've had this conversation, and I'm so incredibly grateful for your journey because you learned that early on. A lot of people don't uncover their purpose that early. And I desperately want that. I desperately want that for millions and millions of women.
Yeah, I agree so much. I mean, that's like what gives me right now so much purpose, essentially, right? Is that uncovering for other people. And I think I was so driven to help women change their relationship with alcohol because it's like, let's get that out of the way. Let's remove the thing that doesn't serve you. And all of a sudden, this sense of possibility, the sense of energy, the sense of wait a minute, maybe I can do much more than I ever thought was capable. It's like this springboard that we now have to, really go after anything. And I just think it's a magical space to be in. It almost seems harder to just come from, no change at all, to just believe all of a sudden that anything is possible. So that's why I love the work I do. But I'm so curious in your own journey. I think that we learn early on, like you were saying, that when we do the good things, we get approval, we get love, we get connection, all this kind of stuff. And so in our minds, doing different things for external approval or love becomes like a way that we meet our needs. And it's just so hard to know am I doing this for the right reasons or not, right? Because some goals can often function like that. Like they are just check marks to get the approval versus knowing what you really want to do for your heart. So for example, I got master's degrees, I did good in college, I have an MBA. None of those things were intrinsically things that lit me up or anything, right? And so it feels so different now that I'm working on these goals that are really driven by what I want versus what I thought someone else would think looks good, if that makes sense. And so how did that look like in your career?
It's so different being led by passion and mission. That's the mindset shift. And you don't really know what that drive is until you actually experience it. in all of my careers, I had such a heart and to serve and a heart to heal, but you think you have that passion and that drive until you actually uncover your purpose and your calling. So for me, it was a wake up call. I knew that I was searching for my worth and value externally. I did know that because there's a point where, I had reached the an amazing goal that I've always wanted, to earn 7 figures. I wanted that goal, and I reached that goal. And I just remember I was standing in my backyard and I was thinking, okay, I have it all. I have everything I want, but why do I feel so empty on the inside? And that was actually the beginning of me doing the healing, is just realizing my worth and my value cannot come from external sources. But how do I figure that out in me? How do I figure that out? And I took a lot of the wrong roads for me. I'm not saying that they're the wrong roads, but the wrong roads for me. I really had to do that inner deep work to uncover what those belief systems were that I was not aware of.
Yeah. So can you share a few examples of ones either you had or ones that you find are just really prevalent for the women you work with?
The bottom line, the majority of us, we're not enough or we're not worthy. So bottom line, that's the underlying issue. But belief systems, just being in the self-development, personal growth industry for 24 years, belief systems are unique to each of us. So your I'm not worthy may sound a little bit different than I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
And so one of my belief systems was I'm always second. I'm never most important. I'm always second. So what does that say? It says I'm not worthy. It says I'm not important, but that's specific to a belief system that was uncovered through doing that deep work. So when I do my affirmations, it's specific to that belief system to change the neural pathway to my belief system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So most of us have, it's that underlying I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. But we have to be specific. Otherwise, those affirmations, you're just kind of throwing them out to the wind and hoping something sticks in order to rewire and change those neural pathways.
And so in your example, like you have this memory, right? This poignant memory of when your stepfather made you feel not important. So you can kind of really see where that belief formed. Do you think it's important for people to recognize where those beliefs came from? Or like what happens when someone doesn't have like an event or something like that to be able to pinpoint where that came from? So they're not sure exactly where the healing, I mean, it could just be 5 years of childhood that just, maybe not specifically this and that happened, but it just didn't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I will be honest, I've yet to find a client who I couldn't find the trauma.
So it's always a memory, you think?
There's always a memory.
Yeah.
There's always a specific memory. And when you really allow consciousness to guide, they'll go directly to that memory.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I think for me, my one is that I'm not capable, right? So it's a version of I'm not worthy, but somehow it's like book smart I got, right? Like I am intelligent, I believe I can read and learn stuff, but then implementing it, executing it, like other people just had that, right? And I just didn't have that. And it's so uncanny because I've proven that so wrong, for so much of my life, and especially in the last 4 years as an entrepreneur and alcohol-free woman. But it's always like the next level will be like, well, I can't do that. I'm not capable. I don't know how. And it's not like I don't know how, but like I won't be able to do it. Like other people just have some uncanny, I don't know, charisma or something that I just am lacking. So it's so interesting how you say that we all have this, like, somehow we're not on par, somehow we're not here. And then we describe it in a unique way to ourselves.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And here's the interesting thing. So, doing subconscious mind work. What I don't know what you know about the subconscious mind, but the subconscious mind we receive all commands directly from the conscious mind. So the conscious mind is like, I'm in charge, and I'm giving you that information into the subconscious. So if I believe I'm not important, and that's a belief that I created, then my subconscious mind can only say yes to whatever I give it. Yes, whatever I give it, because it it is the one that is directing everything else in our life. So it just says yes. And so the energy that's behind that scarcity mentality, I now start subconsciously searching out people who make me feel not important. And I can see that throughout my entire life
Mm.
until I finally reprogram that, and I can stand in my truth. And you create such a different abundant life when you can get rid of some of those fear-based scarcity thinking. It's mind-blowing. I mean, I'm so passionate about it, obviously, but
Yeah. So let's
yeah.
stay with this belief of I'm not important. So let's say we start working with someone and you recognize their core belief, you get even their core memory from it. What would be the steps that you would outline for someone to change that belief system?
Well, one of the things that um I do is really to write out any memory initially of that you have that sticks out in your mind where it was a little bit hurtful or painful. And from there, I can identify, certain traumas, etc. So the idea is, there's a negative emotion attached to trauma. In a high state negative emotion, so a boyfriend breaks up, stepfather leaves, whatever, we create a story. So it's in that high state of negative emotion, we create that story that just plays on autopilot constantly in our mind. And so, in order to neutralize that, so it needs to be neutralized, you actually have to re experience the event. And walking my clients through re experiencing it on a very safe, um, very to the point, re-experiencing it until the emotion is neutralized, and then we can begin the reprogramming. And they just basically do their declarations every single day, but the release of that negative emotion is transformational. Sometimes you can even see it.
Yeah.
The heaviness in their shoulders go away, their face changes. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
And what would that look like? Like specifically, like what is re-experiencing look like? Like are we talking about it? Are we
We're
how would
talking.
you do that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. We're walking through it, and I basically just ask, tell me, from start to from beginning to end. Let's talk about the event, and as if you're there right now. So share with me everything that's going on, and I want you to re-experience the emotions as they're coming through. And we just continue to go through that process until the emotion is neutralized, and then we can go on to next steps. So it's very safe. I do a lot of it via Zoom, and obviously working up to those events, I'm completely explaining everything that we're going to be doing during our coaching sessions, and everyone's very aware that we're going to do some trauma work. We also do work with, I work with upsets. If you're upset about something, if you're getting triggered for something, we have to get rid of that trigger before we can actually do some deeper dives into some things.
Okay. So it sounds like to me, like first it's like kind of like the root of a hair, right? Like we go all the way down to the root of the hair and we excavate that, we neutralize those negative emotions. So now let's say the root of the hair is pulled out. How do we clean up the pore, whatever this analogy I'm going with, but like what comes next after they re-experience and neutralize those traumas?
Yeah, so they make new declarations. They get to choose how they're creating their life from this day forward, because we created that belief system. I created that belief system at age 12. So now it's neutralized. I get to make a decision on how I want to create moving forward. So what is my truth? And standing in that truth, and saying those declarations every day will help to reprogram the neural pathways in your brain. So there's actually healing that begins, and the old neural pathway starts to close off. So amazing, fascinating things to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you work with clients, when your experience, like how many of these false belief systems are we carrying? I mean, I'm sure it's not just one or a handful even, right? Like they're probably various different variations of a similar theme, but like they're probably spread out in so many different areas of our lives, right?
Yeah, so you could have one experience where you made several different declarations. You made some commands about yourself. The commands are the negative limiting beliefs. So there can be one session where there's 3 or 4 commands that we're working to rewire. I had a session where there were 4 commands that I personally needed to rewire through one particular event. So, depending on how much somebody goes through, the declarations that I have today, I read 8 every day. Yeah.
And what would you say? I guess I should have asked this earlier, but what would you say to someone who isn't sure what their negative belief is?
No, most people don't know.
Yeah.
Most people don't know. But what happens is we numb. So that's a way to know that there's something within us that needs to be healed. So we numb. We numbed with alcohol. I numbed with alcohol. Some people numb with food. Some people numb with being busy. Like, I'm just so crazy busy. Some people numb through Netflix. Some people numb through gambling. Some people numb whatever, through sex, through money, through spending. There are so many different ways that we numb. So that's number one. If that's something that you are experiencing in your life, we got to do some deep dive into the root cause of that. So with the women that I work with in particular, they're burned out. They feel like they're not living authentic. They're saying yes to so many things because they don't know their core values, and they're confused, they're procrastinating, they have highs and lows, they're frustrated, and they don't have a level of happiness. So any of those emotions will say, hey, let's take a look at what's causing this. And most of it is we're living inauthentically, right? Alcohol, we live inauthentic to who we really are. So that's that's really what it is just looking at what are the things that are going on in your life today that we can take a look at and go, okay, let's do a deeper dive. Let's do a deeper dive into that and see what your limiting beliefs are. I had no clue. I mean, seriously, when I was practicing medicine as a PA, I had this little daily affirmation calendar on my desk. Be happy. I'm like, oh, good. I'll be happy. And we just don't know until we know, right? That there's something, the way that I'm feeling is causing, there's something deeper in there. And we're not taught to use our emotions. We're just not taught. And we actually are taught to put a meaning behind emotion. And if we can neutralize that meaning of that emotion and switch it, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. Speaking of just like the alcohol and the numbing or the other various ways people do it, it's just so uncanny. Like how you say, you don't know until you know. So like now I can just see why, like unfulfilled. I was bored. I had nothing literally better to look forward to. Right. And so alcohol played such a role there. But back then it was, well, everyone's drinking at a party on a Saturday. Everyone's going to happy hour. Back then I couldn't see the bigger picture, the bigger meaning. It was almost this protective mechanism of like, I'm not doing anything wrong or weird. This is what people do. You know what I mean? And I think to like even break through to recognize, well, it doesn't matter if everyone's doing that. Most people on this planet are unhappy. Most people on this planet are struggling with negative beliefs and are numbing, right? Like it's not a good enough excuse to kind of stay stuck in something just because it's like the norm, cultural way that we just do things as a society. So I just think that's so key to recognize. And you have a book that came out in this year called Unbecoming. Tell us all about your book.
So yeah, it's Unbecoming, a journey to finding her. And it really is my story of how I realized there were so many traps that I basically got caught up in life, searching for my value and worth in the world. And it's sometimes, well, for me, I believed that in order to be a worthy human, I needed to have a degree as a PA. I needed to be a graduate of distinction. I needed to be top earner and multi-level, all of these things. And the journey really is in unbecoming the lies that we believe about ourselves. And that you already have that divine purpose and calling. We just have to unbecome some of the things that we have allowed to attach to us from the external world to really open up and see that.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Well, we'll definitely include links to the book in the show notes below. And, I was just thinking too, as I'm speaking to you, I think that there's so many beliefs that are so personalized, right? Like I am always second, and I am not capable, and I'm not good enough. And then I think there's these global beliefs we pick up too about just like the reality of the world. Well, businesses fail, for example, or just like it's not possible to do X, Y, and Z. And I think I used to also hold a lot of those global beliefs, and I would call myself before a very skeptical person, and I've changed my worldview so much, right? Like I believe in miracles, literally, right? I've witnessed miracles. I've experienced miracles. My clients have experienced miracles. I just have a different way of looking at the world. But I will often find that version of me that's still so skeptical and buying into that old worldview is still kind of there and just checking like, wait, have you gone off the rails completely yet? And so I always like kind of go back to like, how would I explain this to that passive version of me so that she understands? And that's often how I approach personal development, is making sure that whatever I'm saying can still like be heard by that past version of me who would have never bought into any of this. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, do you find that too with your work, that there's these very personalized beliefs, but there's also these like worldview beliefs, and they can become, just like basically whatever I think it's our parents' realities of what's possible in their generation becomes our reality, but we don't even recognize, well, wait a minute, things have changed. Like so much more is possible than we believe. But we're kind of living in that scarcity mindset still.
Oh my goodness, this is a hot topic for me, honestly, because I am at the point in my life where I question everything. I question everything. Why do I believe that? Why do I believe this? Why do I believe this? Just because someone told me that that was my role or my identity, just because that's what the world says that I need to do or what is supposed to happen. But yeah, I definitely, we do have those. We all have those, but those will pop back into your life as you're growing and as you're evolving. And as you are seeing your world through the miracles and the abundance, because it's there every day, right? As you're growing and evolving, sometimes there are some of those things that come back into your life just to, okay, how are we? Are you really believing this now? It's really to make sure you're still in that abundant mentality. And I love those little, those are just little golden nuggets that come back into your life where you go, yeah, I am. I'm still doing that abundant thing and believing in miracles, but they'll come back and they'll test you, right? But there are so many things that we believe as society, and I tell my kids, question everything. Why do you believe what you believe? Because somebody told you that? What is your truth? You have such a beautiful story about living authentically, because I know, when you realized that it was time for you to ditch alcohol, it was you realized that you were living an inauthentic life during the week. Yeah. So beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Well,
beautiful.
I could chat for you forever. I love this conversation so much. And I just thank you so much for all of the wisdom you've shared of, really going back to that source memory. And I think that seems really complicated and maybe kind of, confusing, but I think you just shared such a clear way of understanding why our beliefs formed and how we need to reprogram them. And I think, like you said too, like if we didn't do that deeper work and we just slapped an affirmation on it, it's just like, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. Well, the subconscious isn't buying it, right? Because it falls flat. And so I think that's where a disconnect can often be, is people just try the second half of the work without maybe doing some of the first half, and it doesn't really apply as well. So I really thank you for sharing the process. We'll go ahead and link your website and your social media in the show notes so everyone can find Deanna and talk to her, work with her, find her, follow her, all those beautiful things, buy her book. And I'm just curious, if you had a piece of advice for the version of you who is going through the most pain in your life, what would you tell her today if you could talk to her then?
Mm. Whew.
I know I put you on the spot with this one.
Yes, man, and I innately knew this, but I would just tell her, babe, you're beautiful, you're enough, you're worthy, you have an amazing purpose and plan, and you're going to impact so many lives. This is just part of your journey to grow into that person. So keep going, keep growing. You're enough.
Mm, beautiful. Well, I'll definitely end there on those notes. Thank you so much for being on the show, and hope everyone listening has a beautiful week, and we'll tune in next week.